Welcome to the Blissful Hiking Adventures webinar, Hiking in a Post-Viral World. Glad you're here so we can talk about the wonders of hiking when sometimes things are difficult. We know how much we enjoy the great outdoors. When things are stressing us and things are going on, we like to escape. But there are ways that we can also look at hiking in a matter of safety and in a matter of other ways of exploring the great outdoors, and ways that I discovered especially during the 2020 COVID pandemic. I am your host, Laura Lee Bliss, trail name Blissful, and I've hiked the Appalachian Trail twice. First time northbound with my teenage son, second time southbound as a solo hiker, and endeavoring to do it a third time, about halfway already. I've done multiple other trails as well in multiple states. So coming to you with words of wisdom and lots of lessons learned along the way. My adventures have taken me to the top and the heights, such as in the Rocky Mountains, where I reached over 13,000 feet. And yes, to the lows as well, where I've endured swamps and the beauty of the palms in the Florida Trail. I also have a new podcast out under Blissful Hiking Adventures. You can look for it on the iTunes store. In it, I talk about hiking in the viral world. I talk about other things having to do with hiking and bringing my wealth of knowledge and a lot of the things I learned through the episodes that I will be sharing. So be sure you check that out and sign up so you never miss an episode. I am also the author of a series, the Hiking Adventure series. The first, Mountains, Madness, and Miracles, 4,000 miles along the Appalachian Trail, and of course the follow-up, Gators, Guts, and Glory, Adventures along the Florida Trail. You can find those on Amazon. All right, so let's talk about first this virus thing. In 2020, most of you probably know we were enduring the virus thing, or the COVID epidemic that gripped our country and the world. It saw a lot of things for us as hikers we never thought we would see, such as the woods closing. We always thought the woods would be safe, didn't we? We always thought it'd be okay to walk in them and be healthy. But alas, a lot of the trails got closed. A lot of boundaries to those trails got closed too. We were ordered away. What did that make us feel like? Yeah, you betcha. I know I was angry, and I wanted to defy the laws and defy the people were telling me to do and go hike anyway, because I knew with my background as a registered nurse that it was good for me. But yet here we were with trails closed. And what do you do when the trail is like love? For love for us is what? Backpacks, kayaks, and adventuresome spirits, says Charlie Brown. And boy, don't we know that, huh? Because we know too, when the mountains call, we feel we must go. And especially when there's so much turmoil or things happening in our lives, the mountains give us a rest. But we also realize after suffering through the epidemic that there are others out there too that may have fragile health issues. So we need to be a good neighbor. So keeping our hands washed, staying home if we're not feeling good, avoiding close contact with others. And then, of course, the last one's really important. Don't use your slower friends as bear bait, right? Hey, you gotta laugh sometimes, don't you? But it is important because we also want to safeguard people that are out there that we meet. So, of course, finding the trails were closed, I had to drag out my books and maps and figure out, what am I going to do? Where am I going to go? I definitely don't want to go where everybody else is going. There's something about finding a solitary adventure in the woods that's very healthy. Of course, my backyard playground was always Shenandoah National Park, but during the COVID epidemic, it was closed for many weeks. And it was very trying on me because that's where I always went. I went there to find these beautiful views and a solitary waterfall and to just enjoy nature. So I looked elsewhere. I looked for other trails. I looked up trails in the George Washington National Forest that was still open to me. Checking out websites like Hiking Upward and the All Trails websites can yield some really new adventures. And suddenly here I am, on a new overlook, on a new trail, on the Massanutten Peak in George Washington National Forest, gazing out at this glorious view. It's a view I don't readily see, though, either from Shenandoah National Park. But it was a glorious view, and I was very happy to be there. It also made me appreciate the small things I would discover on the trail, like this little guy who greeted me on one of the trails in George Washington National Forest. You see, before all this virus stuff came about, I think I took nature for granted. I would pass these little things and say, yeah, they're there. But boy, when you don't have them, they become all the more wondrous to you, like this little newt guy. I also started to discover other trails, even trails in my county system here, trails that would lead me into the forest and even to interesting overlooks. Like I went into this forest preserve and suddenly I'm gazing out at an overlook that I'd never even been to before. So all those times I went to Shenandoah were nice, but yet I'm discovering new trails and new experiences. And I'm finding new water sources too, to just sit there and allow that sound of the water just to fill me, especially when things are so difficult. Just the peace of a river, there's nothing like it. I even got to exploring caves. Now, I'm not naturally a spelunker, I'm usually a hiker, but when a fellow hiker told me there's actually even some caves nearby, well, I had to find those out too. You see, I was doing all the easy stuff by taking out the same old maps and doing the same old things. But one thing the whole virus thing in 2020 showed me is there's a lot more fascinating things to explore and to see. And I was actually not giving nature credit. But one thing I made sure I did, and it's important to do anyway, is to be prepared. Especially when you're out day hiking, you want to make sure you have those essentials that are necessary to keep you safe. Carry a first aid kit, and most importantly, know how to use that first aid kit. Make sure you have a well-charged cell phone. Make sure you have navigational aids, food that you need. If it's going to get chilly or wet, that you have the garments you need, like a hat or a fleece or a rain jacket, sun protection. All these things are important to keep you safe. Oh, and how could we forget the hand sanitizer, right? Now, thankfully, I don't have to show you the toilet paper. For those that experienced the pandemic in 2020, wasn't toilet paper the #1 item that everybody was craving, wasn't it? Pretty wild, huh? But absolutely, carrying some sanitizer, especially some with the 70% alcohol, is important. Then, of course, there's the wonderful backpacking experiences where you're carrying the backpack on your back and enjoying a wonderful walk in the woods that leads you to exploring the woods during the day and camping out at night. This is actually my tent set up on the Colorado Trail, but there's actually some wonderful trails and experiences to explore backpacking as well. One thing you want to avoid are the trails where everybody's gathering. We learned with the COVID virus that gathering together could spread illnesses. We know every year on the Appalachian Trail, the thru hikers were always contending with the bad stomach flu called the norovirus. Every year we would hear tales of people getting really sick and having to get off the trail. So viruses are absolutely prevalent in places where people are gathered. So find those out of the way places. Try to avoid congregating in the shelters a lot because that can spread illness, or sharing your hiker food. Find those out-of-the-way places that you can set up your tent. Make sure you have the right kind of maps and other navigational aids to help you find those places. And enjoy a beautiful sound of the stream running by, like this isolated tent site I found off the Massanutten Trail. Of course, we definitely want to practice the leave no trace outdoor ethics, don't we? So we're going to just review them quickly. Always plan and prepare. That's kind of what we're doing anyway. When you're finding out that trails may be open or closed, or there may be people or not, you want to plan and prepare. Always protect your food from the wildlife. You want to make sure the bears aren't getting into it, right? Have enough cord to hang your food bag properly, or even bring a bear canister. Carry out the trash. Please don't burn it, because a lot of times that stuff doesn't burn and it's left for animals to get into. Always camp in durable surfaces or in places where people have camped before. Don't make new campsites. You want to bury your waste. Make sure that you're not doing your duty near a stream or other habitable place. And avoid the large campfires. Not only are seeing a blackened soil there is very distasteful, but unfortunately many times those campfires get out of hand and we could actually have a wildfire happen. One of the most important things, though, is make sure you're carrying the proper gear to do your hike. This is actually a hike I did on the Allegheny Trail, which is the long trail of West Virginia. Kind of a more primitive experience because the trail really is marked as well as other trails. So it was important for me to know navigation, to know how to read a map, to be self-sufficient. So be sure you're carrying all the gear that you need to and the gear fits you well. Hopefully in the future I can do a webinar on some of those very important details on how to prepare for a backpacking journey. But for now, there's plenty of resources online to show you what you need to carry. Very important that you have a map or navigational aid out there. Paper maps are indispensable. They never wear out. They never lose their battery power, do they? It's always good to have one. But these are becoming very popular as well, as like the Gut Hook app for many trails out there now. You can get them on Atlas Guides online. And they show up on your phone. They can tell you where you're at, where you need to go. There's a lot of notes on where to camp, where to find water. And then hikers will leave notes too about trail conditions. So it's a good resource to have for many of the trails that are out there. Of course, I loved doing the Appalachian Trail in the spring, and during the COVID pandemic, we were told that the AT may not be the best place to go. And so during that time, I hit a fascinating trail in the South Carolina-North Carolina border called the Foothills Trail. Straddles two state parks, Oconee and Table Rock, for about 76 miles, and ended up being a wondrous journey. I started at Oconee State Park at the west end of it's called the FHT or Foothills Trail. In it, I was able to meander along some beautiful rivers, see waterfalls, bridges. It was lovely. Here's Whitewater Falls, one of the largest falls, and I believe the largest falls in the East Coast. It was beautiful. My only sad thing is when I passed this waterfall in 2020, there had been somebody that had died playing by it, and that was very sad for me. But the beauty of it, though, is stupendous. It's the beauty of the trail maintainers. What they've done on the trail is stupendous, too. Doing these wonderful stairs, making these wonderful bridges, crossing these rapid streams and rivers. Pretty amazing. And of course, what's even more amazing is nature's creation in the waterfalls. Hi, welcome to the Foothills Trail. I came down here for a week of adventure since everything else was closed. I was planning to do some other trail, including the AT where I left off, trying to recuperate back into hiking slowly after my accident a couple years ago. But this is the only trail was open, and I'm happy to be back because I've got this wonderful view here. I'm camped now at a lake, so this is really pretty. Kind of pan the campsite here. There's a fire pit And then it's got a picnic table, my tent's there, and then back at the lake here, so it's real pretty out. So I'm glad to be here tonight. We'll see what tomorrow brings. It's supposed to bring rain. Got this big pine tree in my sight here, so I may be camping out in a rock overhang, so I don't know. We'll see what happens with that, but we're finishing this up on Saturday. So it's been a good adventure, unique in more ways than one. So as every trip is. So good night from the Foothills Trail. So here I am straddling two state lines, actually, North Carolina, South Carolina, which the trail will go in and out of, which was kind of interesting. Here I'm standing at the tallest peak in South Carolina. They have a beautiful platform here that you can gaze out into the wonder of South Carolina, which for many you think would be flat, but absolutely in the western part of the state is actually quite mountainous. So it was a beautiful time. And then once you reach Table Rock State Park, the eastern boundary of the Foothills Trail, you again are treated to some beautiful views off these rocky cliff faces, so that's really nice to see. So my finish was at Table Rock State Park, so 76-mile journey took about a week to do during the spring of 2020. Actually, my second through hike of this trail. Great trail for beginners, great trail too if you want to explore some beauty and yet feel like you are a real through hiker by finishing an entire trail. So it's kind of nice. And what was even better is I felt good about it because I wasn't where everybody else was, and I could enjoy a nice journey on a trail to make me feel good mentally and physically while still doing my part in 2020 during that virus pandemic. So as we wrap up here, I just encourage you to find those special places to do your hikes and your backpacking adventures. And use those special places as a way to really invigorate your soul and help you feel better mentally and physically. Stay tuned. I'll be doing more great webinars coming up. Check out blissfulhiking.com or feel free to email me. I have an informational brochure on the webinars that I can actually do for your organization or library. Be glad to do that as well. Again, my books are available, the Hiking Adventure series, on Amazon. And don't forget my hiking podcast, Blissful Hiking Adventures, available on iTunes. And lots of good information at blissfulhiking.com. So as Charlie the Bear says, thanks for stopping by and hope there's a great hiking adventure in your future.